Elena Pantaleoni, in front of us stands a bottle of your Stoppa 2002, wine mainly made of Cabernet and Merlot. Before we start talking about the wine itself and tasting it, I would like to address an issue which is, in my view, rather particular. In your winery in Emilia-Romagna, you grow aside traditional varieties such as Malvasia, Bonarda, Barbera, also varieties like Cabernet and Merlot, out of which this wine is made. Can you explain on how this came and what is behind?
Yes. So my estate is a very old estate. The previous owner found it at the end of 19th century. And he had probably a lot of contacts with French people, French producers, and he planted at that time in the 20s, after the phylloxera, a lot of French varieties, mainly French varieties. And he vinified all these varieties, and until the Second World War, the Stoppa was called Weingut La Stoppa. And then when my father bought the estate in 1973, we found all these different varieties. It was like a treasure, and we could experiment and vinify all these different varieties such as Chardonnay, Sauvignon, Marsanne, Tokai, Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, and some other Italian varieties such as Bracchetto, for example, for many years. And then we decided in '96 to focus on those varieties which for us were more suitable for our climate and soil. So we took away all those varieties that get ripe very early because it's not the right climate, such as Pinot Noir and Sauvignon and Chardonnay. But we kept the Cabernet and Merlot because it's very suitable. They grow and they ripe very well in our soil. And from the beginning, this wine has always been called Stoppa, as the name of the estate. So even if they are not local varieties, the wine is still made with the oldest vineyard present in the estate, about 90 years old, a part of the wine. So for us, it's a very traditional wine for La Stoppa estate, even if it's not typical. In the years now, already for many years, Cabernet Sauvignon is DOC in our area, but this doesn't mean a lot. So we kept on doing it because it's very representative also for the estate. And then I wouldn't talk about international varieties since they are present in Italy now for many, many years, not just in Emilia-Romagna, not just at La Stoppa, but in many places in Italy, in other regions. So the important thing is not to use international or local varieties, in my opinion, but is not to make international wines. You can make a Barbera, which is very local for us, in an international way. This is not our goal. What we would like to do is to make wines that reflect very much the soil and the climate, so the terroir. Barbera has its own character with a lot of acidity and no tannins and a lot of fruit. Cabernet Merlot has its own personality with more roundness and spicy, less fruity. So for myself, there is no contradiction between using Barbera or Bonarda or using Cabernet Merlot. The important thing is to maintain the characteristics of the variety cultivated in our place, in our soil and climate.
You were mentioning tradition, and in your philosophy of making wines, you have also very innovative approaches. This apparently two poles of tradition and innovations, how do you personally balance that, which then results in wines like you produce?
But it's as I told you, is an old estate, and we almost, my family is there and almost for 40 years now. In this, myself personally, I'm there for 20 years now. So in all this year, we developed like an idea of wine made in our place. And what is very important for us is that you can feel in our wines, first of all, the place, then the vintage, and at the end, the variety. So all our wines, in a way, you can feel that they are made in a warm place where the berries, where the grapes get ripe very well. That's why we make a white with skin contact maceration. So we try to use everything of the grape because it gets so ripe, and so we make the passito, the dessert wine. So we take advantage of the sun that there is there. So our approach towards wine is to understand really where we are and what is really the potential of our place, and then make wines that are more easy to make because they are more suitable to the place where we are. And so this is our approach, which is, I think, very traditional, but with a more awareness of who we are and where we are. No? So that's why we are organic certified in the vineyards, and even in the cellar, even if there isn't any certification, we work with natural yeasts, very low sulfites. We don't filter the wines. So the goal is to maintain really the characteristics of the soil, the terroir, and the vintage, because each vintage is very different one to the other. And so now, comparing to 40 years ago, there is more awareness about the ambience, about the pollution. So this is a more, this I wouldn't say it's innovative, but for sure it's more aware. No? And if you think that the work of a viticulture, a wine, not a winemaker, but a grape grower, it's a very long process. So what we plant now, the vineyards have to be good for at least 40 years. Yes. And I hope my niece will take over the business, and so you have to think in very long term. No? And so the respect for the soil and for the ambience comes also for because of that, no? Because of the time, very long time thinking.
I think we arrive at the point where we should also taste the wine and talk about the wine itself.
So this is Stoppa 2002. This is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and the 20% of the wine is made with a very old vineyard, 90 years old vineyard, with a little bit of Carmenère and two other Bordelais varieties, minor Bordelais varieties. 2002 has been a very rainy and a very cold vintage, so we decided to release the wine after the 2003, which was the opposite, a very sunny and very dry vintage. So this wine needed more time to express itself, because it's a very austere wine, very classic in a way, but it needed much more time. All my wines are better after a while when they are open, because they need to breathe, they need to take air. So if you give it a little time, if you can decant them, this is much better. So what I think of this wine is that at the nose you really feel the herbaceous side of the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Carmener too. So it's quite spicy and not fruity, as for example the Barbera is. And after almost 10 years, even in the mouth, I think that the tannins are quite smooth, tender. Of course, it's a wine that you have to imagine with some food. It's not a wine to taste and to drink by itself. So if you match with a meat or something with character, also the tannins are even smoother. No? And it has a long persistation in the mouth, and but it's not. It's 2002 vintage, so it has character. It has structure, but it's it's one of those vintages that are more elegant, if you want, than powerful.
Absolutely.
What I like.
Yes. And elegance is really what I associate with this wine. I think the way you described it, there is nothing to add. Thank you, Elena.
Thank you, Lucas.